Hey, and welcome to Eat Out at Home, the podcast. This is the place for those with exquisite taste who are on a mission to cook better, eat healthier, dine together, and add some gourmet to their everyday. I'm your host, Chef Evelyn, and on this podcast, we talk about all things food, cooking, baking, and entertaining as I share stories from my well-seasoned career as a professional chef for over 20 years. So if that sounds tempting to your taste buds, grab a snack, sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Eat Out at Home, the podcast. And today I want to talk about the pros and cons of having an ingredient-only kitchen. So first, let me clarify what an ingredient-only kitchen is. And I didn't come up with this term. I actually heard this term from a YouTuber that I was following for years. She goes by the name Tony Daly. And so shout out to Tony if you ever listen to this episode. But she talked about how in her house, you're not going to find a lot of prepackaged food. You're not going to find a quote unquote a lot of snack food or things that you can just like grab and eat. She was like, she has an ingredient kitchen, not a like ready to eat snack kitchen. And I chuckled because I was like, that is me. And her point was like, if you come to her house, if you want to eat something, it has to be prepared. There is nothing that's just like sitting in the pantry or in the freezer that you can just like heat and eat, right? And I chuckled so much because I was like, oh my gosh, that is like how I live my life. And I realized if you open up my pantry, there aren't snack foods. I mean, I may keep a few little bags of like plantain chips, or I do have a thing for these chocolate covered rice cakes, and maybe some little individual bags of popcorn. Outside of that, though, everything is an ingredient. If you go into my freezer, everything is something that has to be cooked and prepared, right? And obviously, same thing in my fridge. I just don't purchase a lot of ready to eat or heat and eat foods. I think they can come in handy when it comes to what I call ice foods in case of emergency foods, but typically I don't have those things on hand. And I was thinking about this, right? Because when she said it, I thought, do people live another way? Of course people live another way, Evelyn. And, I think about sometimes when I'm on social media and I see those like organization videos where people are like super stocking their pantry and their fridge. I realize they have a lot of ready to eat foods, right? A lot of prepackaged ready to eat foods. And I just don't have that. That's just not my life. I don't even know what I would buy if I tried to live that way, right? So there's no shade to that, but I just love the fact that she gave a term to a way that I live and the way that I, nourish myself, the way I feed myself. And so there are some pros for sure to having an ingredient only kitchen, but there are some cons, and I want to talk about it today. So, I will say this. When it comes to cooking at home consistently, one of the things that I love about having an ingredient only kitchen is that I have everything on hand. Like I was on FaceTime with a friend a couple of weeks ago, and I was like showing her my spices. I know it sounds nerdy, but she also likes to cook. So like, just rock with me here. And, I was telling her that I actually counted my spices, just my spices, not including like my oils, my vinegars, just my spices. And I think I had maybe like 50 to 60 spices. And I was like, it just doesn't feel like enough. I was like, I can name you 10 things offhand that are missing from this lineup that I really need to get a hold of. And she was like, you even have like 6 different types of salts. I was like, I do, but leave me alone. Like, let me nerd out about, what I enjoy. But the reason I have that is because I cook at home a lot and I like variety. And I will say having a pantry and a freezer that's pretty full stocked of ingredients, it almost like encourages me to cook at home. It's like it's whispering to me like, cook me, eat me, right? Like, and it really inspires my creativity, right? and keeping those things on hand kind of holds me to the promise I made to myself, which was I want to eat 80% of my meals, prepared at home. And so it sparks my creativity, number one. It inspires me to cook at home. And it also encourages me to waste a lot less. It's like, you can look in your freezer and go, that is actual dollars sitting in there, right? There's actual dollars sitting on your shelf. But it also makes it fun. If you follow me on Instagram, then you know that one of my other loves, maybe not as strong, but pretty close, has been with me almost as long as cooking has been, is I love makeup. In particular, I love luxury makeup. And so I have a pretty sizable makeup collection. Not as much as like a makeup influencer or a makeup YouTuber, but definitely more than probably the average woman has in her collection, right? I love it. But one of the things I love about it is the variety that it gives me. That one day I can, make up my face and it looks this way, and another way I can use a completely different set of products and get a completely different look. And that's how I feel about having an ingredient kitchen. It really keeps things interesting. And not that I'm here to talk about, or to preach what healthy eating is or isn't, but having an ingredient-based kitchen by default is a healthier kitchen, right? I know that I don't have nearly as many preservatives or dyes or different things because these are not prepackaged foods. These are just ingredients, right? I have complete control. I won't say complete control because obviously the farmers have the ultimate control, but I have a significant amount of control over the quality and the ingredients of what I have, because there are no ingredients to read, right? Like, people always say, oh, you want the label to have less than this many ingredients. It's like, well, ingredients don't have ingredients, right? That apple that's in my fruit bowl doesn't have ingredients. It has compounds and chemicals and nutrients and different things like that, but it doesn't have ingredients. It is what it is. And so I love that. And so there's a level of already knowing that I'm on a healthier path just by the fact that I don't have a significant amount of prepared foods or prepackaged things in my fridge, freezer, or in my pantry, right? So I will say this, though, when it comes to the cons of having an ingredient-based kitchen, right? So I talked about it's healthier, right? The creativity, it inspires me to cook at home, the variety. I love that. And also in those moments where, despite my best efforts, I just don't want to cook, but it's like I really don't want to eat at home, there is nothing available to me. And the choice is either to allow discipline to kick in, right? Which is why I talked about in a previous episode that I prefer to eat out at home by desire and not by discipline, so that when I need the discipline, I have the willpower to do it. And so when you have an ingredient only kitchen like I do, if I get off my system, if I get off my cooking at home system, and or it's been a week or something has happened and nothing is cooked and I'm hungry, it takes some willpower to decide you've got all these ingredients here. You got food at home, right? You got all these ingredients here. You could, push through the hunger and cook at home, or you could go out to eat, right? But I will say this, and maybe this is a pro. This is a positive thing. I would say about 75% of the time when I find myself in that situation, which ultimately I try to keep myself out of that situation, but I would say 75 to 80% of the time, because I have such an ingredient heavy kitchen, I go ahead and I cook. And I guess I view that as a pro, because if I didn't have the ingredients to cook, I probably would be eating out. Now, I will say this. I'm a fan of what I like to call ice meals, which is in case of emergency, which is, if I know that I'm going to be coming up on a busy season or maybe a busy couple of weeks, and I know that there may be a chance that a couple of days in there I might slip up and not have, food ready, or might not have time to cook or something like that, I will pre-purchase things that are heat and eat, right? So it's like, and I don't go to those first, but I know that if push comes to shove, if I get into a pinch and my ultimate goal is to eat at home, even if I'm not necessarily cooking at home, then I'll keep a handful of those in my freezer in case of emergency. So I would love to know from you, do you have a more ingredient-based kitchen? Do you have more of a ready-to-eat kitchen? Have you noticed that, with your eating out at home journey? Have you noticed like, wow, I definitely have more snacks, or or more prepared foods, or it's like, nope, if I want to eat something up in this thing, I'm going to have to cook it. Okay. And that's not always bad, because can I just say this? I'm gonna nerd out a little bit also. Cooking is also just great for your mental health, but then you also get something called NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And so if you're trying to get more movement in, cooking will do it. Okay. And I will say this, just something to consider. And you probably already know this if you've been cooking at home a lot, you will be doing a lot more dishes. Okay. This is the thing that people don't tell you about. But I feel like even as an unmarried person that is child free, I feel like I'm running that dishwasher like it's going out of style. I'm just telling you right now. So anyway, I digress. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Let me know if you have an ingredient heavy kitchen as well. Make sure to tag me on Instagram, and make sure to rate this podcast if you've been enjoying that it's back. And I will see you and chat with you in the next episode. If you're enjoying this podcast, make sure to head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave it a review. And if you're curious about what I'm cooking in between episodes, make sure to stay connected with me on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, where I'm sharing delicious behind the scenes grocery hauls, recipe inspiration, food for thought, and so much more. I'll see you in the next episode.